I got sent a court document this morning, and it has minutes of the court. And I always get really interested when I'm reading something that I never see a court say. And so there are 5 words here that are incredibly important. So the first 2 words I'm going to ask, like, if anybody understands what this means, you know, like that's the first thing that's going to happen. Does anybody know what impropria persona is?
First person?
First person.
Proper person?
Proper person, bingo. It is proper person. Okay, so if you were actually doing this in like a old English common law kind of setting, impropria persona, even though it's Latin, it'd be the proper legal way to speak. It basically means that you're the man. Like you're not representing yourself. You are there in person, present. Okay, it's not like pro se. And so that's really important because that's what really caught my eye. But here are the 5 words. And last week we spent a whole lot of time talking about representation of persons.
And that it was a fiction of the law.
Yeah, and that it's a fiction of the law. So that's that's something to keep at the forefront of your mind when I read these 5 words. Defendant appears in propria persona.
Now, at first, it probably rings differently than what it really is saying.
Y'all like to talk about Karl's videos. Think about how he breaks down the difference between in and at.
A defendant appears in propria persona. Oh, wow.
The defendant is actually in the proper person. You see what I'm saying? They just created joinder right there. That's where they established jurisdiction over the man.
They need a teeny bit of the background on that, JC.
Yeah, explain that.
Okay. The court absolutely knows what they're doing, and they have to establish jurisdiction over the man. Okay? Every man has his own court, but when you do not understand how to exercise your court properly, it's basically the government has to take it over for you because you are not self-governing. This man was not self-governing, okay? The court created joinder between him and the defendant. And so they created joinder in such a way to actually establish jurisdiction very lawfully over the man.
Yeah, and still recognized it. Just like in that other document I read last week where it said Mr. Granger's person. The exact same thing. They just said it in a different way.
So an example would be like, I tell my son, hey, there's the car keys. Bring it. Make sure you're back home by midnight unless you run out of gas. So that gives a clause. It's like a clause. It's like asking a question. Hey, are you a man and govern yourself? Or if you agree to this piece of paper or you show up, you give consent, then our presumption is true, right?
Well, kind of. The real fact is that he never rebutted. He never properly rebutted the presumption. And basically through overt tactic and implied consent, you know, the court was able to establish they had to get his consent somehow, okay, because it all works off of consent. It's just he could have given consent very, very easily without knowing what he was doing. And when he gave that consent, now they can attach the defendant to the proper person, and it creates what they call in the legal world joinder.
Right, but my question is, okay, when did he give over consent unknowingly? Is it when they served him? He showed up to court? He entered the bar?
He probably said something to the effect that he was representing himself.
Remember this phrase, they tell you the truth, they're just not honest. Look, man, they don't lie to you guys. I'm telling you. When they write something, they are absolutely telling you what is going on. We just don't know how to read it.
Right.
When you learn how to read this stuff, you will laugh out loud. It is a game, man. They are literally talking to air.
Yeah.
Worse, yeah. There is no they. It's just a charade. And when you really believe the words on that page, you freak out, man. But when you see that what they're really doing, it's just like, oh, my gosh. This is stupid.
But explain that. Okay, for instance, because you said, I picked up as like you get IRS writes you a letter in the mail saying you owe money or something, or the court says summoning, and then you're talking about the words on the page, and then I think you're also talking about when you show up in court and you lose jurisdiction by saying I'm representing myself. So these are different topics here, and I've seen I heard the court case, and I know it was in Karl's or Gus or whose call it was on, but he was the man that entered the courtroom, and he was standing as a man. Then when he was leaving the courtroom, he's like, okay, the court's over. And
that was me. Yeah. Hey, you just said something about the all capital name not being you. Let me share something with you. Last week, did you know that an all capital word doesn't appear in the English language at all?
Yeah, no,
it doesn't exist.
I heard you say that. I
okay,
knew that
so
too.
Think about this. So when you see a document, even worse than it's not you, it's not there.
Right. And so I wanted to explain that because you said 3 different ways or 3 different situations. Like you put it all together, so it was like I don't know if new people on the call or not or whatever. But that was my mention. That was my purpose. My point was so the toothpick in the mouth, right?
Yes, it's dog Latin, isn't it?
What's that?
The all capital letter name is dog Latin. You ever read this article called The Justinian Connection?
Yeah.
Some guy from Australia researched that whole thing and came up with dog Latin. And a name in uppercase is a meaningless name because to convert that to English, it's got to have, it'll look like if your name is James, it'll go J period, A period, M period. It's really a fascinating article. It's called The Justinian Connection.
And every period is actually the start of a new sentence.
Yes, the only way that you can, an all capital letter can make any sense if you have a hyphen between the letters.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you ought to read that guy's article. I learned a lot about he calls it dog Latin.
Well, think about it. When you go into the military, you join a company, and they give you dog tags.
Yeah, that's right. He makes that analogy.
Oh, you're right.
He makes that analogy.
Yeah.
And then you have a rank within the society, right?
Yes.
And you have duties, obligations, and what? Privileges. And your privilege is to receive what? Liberty.
Yes.
Guys, they're speaking to you in military terms. That's what the Federal Reserve Note is, just a military conscription.
Yeah. Liberty in legalese doesn't mean what we think it does.
Yeah, they just change the face of it every 20 years. I mean, it's also lawful money, too. That's why there's 2 seals on it. We'll get into that some other time. But, I mean, they don't, that's what I'm saying. They tell you the truth. They're just not honest.
I've heard that before.
I want to hear about the toothpick thing. I want to hear about the toothpick thing because I was really wanted to help this guy that has court tomorrow.
Here's what happened. They held their jurisdiction throughout the entire process. And then on the way out the door as they were going, they went over the bar. The judge leaned over and said, "You, take that toothpick out of your ear in my courtroom." They turned around and looked at him and said, "Oh, sorry." And took the ear.
He got him on the U, didn't he?
He got him on several things. First of all, he hurt him. Second of all, he said you. Third, he said my courtroom, so it was his court. And then the man did what he said. Now, look, if I come in and I start bossing you around and you do what I tell you, I'm your boss.
Yeah,
and you lied to me. Because, like, if somebody came to my house and started barking orders at me right now, if they didn't get a gun in the face, they would definitely get told to get out of my yard. I guarantee you I'm not going to do what they tell me to do, unless they've got a bigger gun.
Go on the internet and Google who is you? There's a whole treatise on that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I mean,
use it in plural.
Yeah, just think about it. If you're in a crowd of 100 people and somebody says, "Hey, you, come here," it's that simple to figure out.
Yeah.
My advice from the guy from New Jersey is, I don't know if he's on the call still. I would try to extend your court date or hearing so that you have more time.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to do that once.
I mean, you're already in their jurisdiction.
Absolutely, yep. I guess that's the best option, honestly.
But you can't really get any more in their jurisdiction than you're in now. I mean, you're definitely in their jurisdiction. So buying time can only help. Yeah, it can only help you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I played the U game one time with the judge. It was great. And he goes, "You're charged with such and such and such and such." I said, "Who is you?" He yells at me, "You are you." And I said, "I am you." They dismissed all of it. Yeah. They dismissed all of it.
Karl. I remember that call.
It depends on when in the sentence they use the word you also. If they say it prior to the name, you, Mr. So-and-so, that's differently than Mr. So-and-so, you.
Have you already gotten rid of your attorney, or is your attorney going to show up?
He's going to show up as far as I know, but I'm not too happy about it.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this much, man. Like, it doesn't sound like you have everything ready to go on your own. I would maybe let him go ahead and do his thing, because no matter what, you can always take it back. You can always start over from square one, and at least it's going to buy you time.
Yeah.
You know, and that way you can get on more of these shows, listen to the audios, you know, that kind of stuff.
And this is the other thing. A man can always correct mistakes.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, man's beliefs change daily. You don't believe the same thing today. You definitely, after today's phone call, don't believe the same thing you did yesterday, you know? So it's like you're always evolving, ever changing. That's what makes everything cool. So you can always go back and just start over, man.
Yeah, but I'm going to send my paperwork out tomorrow to this attorney.
Hey, what, Juno, you're sending paperwork out tomorrow? All right, what's that about?
If you don't mind sharing it.
It's just to the lawyer for the other side, asking for the verified claim. Not the claim.
No, man. Don't ask them for the verified claim. Tell them you know and I know there ain't no verified claim. What do you want to do about it?
Yeah, declare that shit.
Yeah, man. You don't ask them for it. You already know it's out there. Dude, if they had it, they would have given it to you like towards that last time.
See, man, you guys are kidding. There ain't no claim up in there, man. He's lying.
Yeah.
Hey, seriously, though, declare that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, just walk in and be like, man, look, what's up? There ain't no claim. Why are we here? Why are you doing this?
Well, I mean, you're just writing a document to them, so just ask them, like, hey, you know and I know that there's no verified claim. What do you wish to do about it? Because he's going to know you're being really nice. Because if you do what you actually know how to do, or someone might actually know how to do this, if somebody actually knows what they're doing, they're going to secure a bond and go take them. And they're going to secure his bond.
Yep.
Yeah.
You secure his bond, man.
I would sincerely love to help my neighbors because theirs is coming up, but they're not. I'm trying to get them on the same page, but I don't think they're like, I'll just pay it. And I'm like, what?
Dude, I just want to know what all the people are going to do in the court. What is it?
Hey, Jim, you're a really rare breed of man, okay? Like, I get asked to go put on seminars and do this and that, and people want me to teach them. And I tell them straight up, like, hey, I'm going to come teach, but I can only show you how to dot the I's and cross the T's. That spark inside your soul, that thing inside your heart that talks to you and makes you move, I can't teach that. I can't teach people not to be afraid. And you're the rare man that you really got that, you know?
Honestly, fear is the largest liability everybody has because most people think pretty clear until they get afraid.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
The danger is real, but the fear is a choice.
That's Will Smith, man, in After Earth. That was a great line.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. I mean, the danger is very real, but fear is a choice. Like, you got to go anyway. You know, you can't get out of it. You know, you got to deal with it. It's like a tornado's coming. Shit. I know. I'll just pretend it's not there. That don't work. You got to deal with the tornado, man. So you got to just sit and think about it and just do what you got to do.
Because if you sit down and don't do anything, you're going to sit there after it's over like, what if you're going to be sitting there with what ifs. What if I actually did it? Then I might have been able to have a different outcome. But then you're sitting there stuck with what ifs instead of just doing it. Like Nike, just do it.
And here's the other thing too, man, and this is probably worse than the fear and the tornado. And that's that moment afterwards, you know, like in one of my favorite movies is Braveheart. You remember when he's riding up and down the thing and those guys were trying to tuck tail and run? He goes, man, you might run home and live. You might live till see an old man.
Yeah.
He said, but, you know, like for the rest of your life, in the back of your mind, you know you didn't stand. And, dude, that's a cut that cuts deeper than any sword ever could. And you know you didn't do what you should have done. And, man, that will eat a man alive forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that guilt ain't nothing to play with.
You got to stand. You're better off dying than to live that way.
Yeah.
You just got to accept it sucks and go forward, man. Welcome to the suck, right?
First time caller.
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm brand new to this, and Gus Breton suggested I get on the chat. My real name's Gordon Nelson, and I've got a situation that I've been talking to Gus about, and he suggested I get on the chat here and talk about it, and then maybe I could get some suggestions.
Okay.
I'm down here in Texas, and I was doing some work gate guarding for oil fields, and in this one county, I got stopped by several of the sheriff's deputies several days in a row. They kind of had a grudge on me. What happened is they would pull me over. They pulled me over, and I went to go to what I thought was the initial hearing, and I was going to speak my piece there. And it turns out that they want you to plead on a piece of paper. And so I was kind of stuck there, and then I thought for a minute. I turned the page over, and I wrote down my notice on there. Notice, I'm an idiot before this court, and so on. And I wrote it and signed it, and I handed it back to the gal. She said, okay, we'll let you know the response to this. Because what I did is, as I got in the truck and I left, I called her on the phone. And I said, did you get my paperwork? Is it going to go to the judge? She says, yeah, we'll give you a response. And they never did, because I put in there that after so many days, I'm going to consider this as, like you're going to forget this or whatever, And so the days went by. I actually got a letter back from the prosecuting attorney, and she said, here's what you can do. You can plead guilty and pay $250, not guilty, and get a Texas driver's license, and we'll drop the whole thing. We'll dismiss it. So I wrote her back, and I said, well, I don't plead in court. I said, but I'm willing to accept your offer since I already have a Texas driver's license. And I wrote the number down. And I said, but the case can't be dismissed. It must be discharged because I'm an idiot before the court. And so I wrote that, and I said, after so many days, I will consider my counteroffer as being accepted. And it was accepted. So what happened was the deputies got upset with this, and so they started harassing me even more. So the second time they pulled me over, it was the same deputy and another deputy that he called in there. And he wanted to see my stuff. He thought I still didn't have a license, and he thought I didn't have a proper plate because it was from out of state. And so I just took his paperwork. He gave me a fix-it ticket, some simple thing, because he was disappointed that he couldn't charge me with anything. And so I took it, and I just wrote on the back of it the same thing and mailed it to the same prosecuting attorney. No problem. And so these guys were mad at me. That is kind of like a vendetta now. And so what happened was they figured out where I worked, where I turned, go on a back road to get to the gate. Somebody followed me down there. I didn't even know they were back there. And so all of a sudden the lights started going. I was close to where I was going to park. So I kept driving. And then when I stopped, I got out and I said, why'd you pull me over? And he says, because your license plate is dirty on the back. So I went and looked at it, and I said, I can clean that up before I go in the morning. And he says, no, put your hands behind your back. And I said, why? He says, I want to cuff you while we talk. And it turned out two other deputies pulled up in separate cars. There were three of them, and it was like it was all planned. And so what they did is they arrested me on a felony charge of fleeing to avoid arrest. And they arrested me and took me to jail. It was crazy. And so I spent 48 hours in jail. I lost my job because I was arrested right in front of them. I'm a security guard. I can't do that. So I lost my job. And so I bailed out at the end of the time, and there's going to be a case. And they put it on something where I have a bail bond, and I have to report every Saturday on my phone. But they're going through the the grand jury or something, and it could take up to a year before they actually have a case. I'm talking to Gus about it here for a little bit, and he suggested that I talk to you folks about a question I have. When I do get to court, they're going to ask me my name, and this is what I'm not sure about, because I asked Gus, I said, what happened with your case? You know, he's got a recording of his case where he was in court, and they don't say anything about how they offered his name or whatever. And he says, I didn't offer my name. I said, how's that work? And he says, well, talk to these guys and maybe they can talk you through it.
There are so many issues that I don't know if you don't see them yet or if you do and you're just not, expounding on them. But I've got two questions. First question is, just to be clear, that last time that they stopped you for a dirty tag, okay, and they said you were fleeing arrest, why did they say, A, you were fleeing arrest, and what would you have been under arrest for to flee?
That's a good question. Here's what happened. I told you that the arresting officer told me to put my hands behind my back so we could talk. He was going to cuff my hands while we talked. Well, while he was doing that, the two other sheriff's deputies pulled up in their cars, and the oldest one came over and said, what's going on here? And he says, well, he took too long to pull over when my lights flashed. And he says, well, how'd you get so far back on this small country road? And he says, well, I flashed my lights and he wouldn't pull over, and then he pulled over right here. And he says, well, just arrest him for fleeing arrest, felony charge, fleeing arrest, arrest him. He says, it's up to you, but that's what I would do. He says, it's up to you, but that's what I would do.
Okay.
But it's just a vengeance thing.
Okay. Part of what you're going to have to do, and then there's a whole other conversation that we're going to have with you, but here's some things just from their point of view, okay, even in their world. Did he have a dash cam? Most of them do.
I asked him, and he said it was all being recorded. I actually have a letter into the prosecuting attorney right now for all the recordings.
No, that's great. Because every time he stops you for some BS, stupid, nitty-pitty thing, here's the problem that he can have. However long he's been an officer, you can actually go and find out how many times he's ever stopped anybody for that. Now, this is from their world, okay? This isn't where the accuser stuff. Just bear with me here, because I want to get your mind settled on the question you're asking first. They have to have, it's probably a policy of the department, they have to have everything recorded. So every time he stopped you, we would love to see those videos. Now, charging you with evading, which is what fleeing is, it'd be evading arrest. First, an officer cannot handcuff you for officer safety just because he's a wussy and is scared of the dark. He has to see a weapon, or you have to be doing some kind of behavior that would lead him to believe you were about to harm him in some way, okay? Like, he could articulate a bunch of stuff, but it has to be something that's reasonable to a jury, okay? He can't just say, well, I was on a backcountry road, so I just figured I'd handcuff him. I mean, I guess he can say that, but that's stupid. I'd love to find out if he was really going to arrest you for a dirty license plate. And then I would like to see every time that he's ever done that in his career. And then I'd couple all of that with all these other videos of him stopping you because the wind blew and your fart stank a little worse on the left side of the car than it did the right-hand side of the car. First thing I would say, because you're in this situation right now, I would go to Walmart and I would buy a dash cam of your own, and then I would have another recording device somewhere in the vehicle that nobody else could see except you, and then I would keep my mouth shut. I wouldn't speak to them at all. When he came to the car again, I'd say, hey, man, how you doing? And he's going to say, I need your license registration. Now, if you wish to give him those things, that's up to you. If you don't, you can always just say, can any of that be used against me in court? And he's going to say, well, yes. And you can say, I wish not to incriminate myself. I now exercise my right to remain silent and sit there and stare at him. You know, but you've got to get some degree of separation between you and this guy in this department, and you've got to get evidence of it, of the harassment and stuff like that. I mean, it's just, that's insane. Like, I don't understand. what this guy's treating you like that for.
It's a small county, and they got kind of like a unwritten code, I guess.
Okay, did you ever do anything against them?
No. I just wrote I wrote those notices on the back of the tickets and sent them to the prosecuting attorney every time. And after the first one, the other two I sent in within 3 days.
Do you have a driver's license?
Yes.
You do?
Yes, I have a Texas driver's license now. Remember I said that she offered me, if I get a Texas license, they would dismiss it. And I wrote back and I said, well, I will accept that part of the offer, but I'm not going to plead anything. She said I should plead not guilty. And it should, rather than be dismissed, it should be discharged. And I said after 20 days, it will be understood that this is dropped, it's been discharged. And that's the way it was, because I checked my record, and there was never a BOLO or a warrant for my arrest or anything, because every time I got pulled over, they didn't arrest me, so I knew it was clean.
Yeah, well, I mean, when they arrest you, technically they're making a custodial arrest. I mean, not when they arrest you, but when they pull you over. Like, when they give you a citation or a ticket, it's a courtesy as to not have to take you down and arrest you. But
it's a citation in lieu of continued custody. You're in their custody. When they activate the lights, you're technically under arrest. You're not free to go.
Yeah.
That's why I asked you, what was he saying you were evading arrest for?
Right.
Because the minute they activate the lights, you're under arrest.
Yeah, dirty plate. That was all he said. And I have the fix-it ticket. That's all it wound up being a fix-it ticket.
So it was a warning.
It's just a warning. Why did they arrest me for a warning? Obviously, I wasn't running away. So my point right now is I sent the same paperwork in when they had the magistrate at the jail at the lockup. I gave him a notice. I asked for pen, paper, and ink so that I could write a reply, and he did it. And so I wrote the same notice, and I said, my word is my bond. I shouldn't have to pay a bond because I'm a man. My word is my bond. And he says, not now. I said, this is being recorded, isn't it? He said, yes. So I wrote him that thing, and I gave it to him. And then when I was supposed to sign the bonding paper, I signed it, and I put UD under duress, not stand under. Do not stand under, because it says you understand that. So I do not stand under. And so I gave it to him. And I finally arranged bond because it was the last day I could stay there, and they were going to take me to the general population. And I didn't want to do that. So I bonded out. It cost $700.
If I may, like, something I'm really struggling with is on the stop, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of cops. And if a cop is going to, if you evaded, okay, when he came up to the car, chances are he would have done a felony takedown, and it would have been handled. But what he did was give you a warning ticket.
Well,
so usually, hold on. A cop will usually, okay, a fix-it, whatever, is a warning. It's just a, hey, get that took care of. And a cop is going to use his traffic stop as his what's known as probable cause to arrest you, especially if he's going to charge you with felony evading. So I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it isn't. What I'm telling you is my mind is having a really hard time getting from, hey, buddy, this is a warning ticket, just get that took care of, to you're under arrest for felony evading.
Right.
What happened in between there?
All right. The other two deputies pulled up after he told me that I had a dirty license. And he put the cuffs on me, he said, while we talk, because he feels safer while we're talking. So I let him do it, you know. I figured just get it over with, give me the whatever, and I'll take care of it like I did to all the others. But then while I was being cuffed, the other two deputies pulled up in their cars. One was a woman and one was an older man. The older man said, how come you're so far back on his road, you know? And he said, well, he just kept going. He didn't stop when I did the lights. And so he says, well, that's felony, right? Felony evading arrest. That's a felony. I'd arrest him. If it was me, I'd arrest him right now. He says, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. He's talking to the younger guy that pulled me over. He says, but that's what I would do. He just pressured him.